The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. This is Bob Jakowski, and thank you for joining us today for today's webinar. Today, what we want to talk about is something diamond in the rough, if you will. How do you transform the way you market, sell, and win your markets in 2024? As you look ahead and you think about how do I navigate for success, the success that you deserve, the success that you want next year, now is the time to plan for that success. So what we're going to do today is we're going to focus in on how do you transform where you are today to where you want to be. And specifically, what we want to do is talk about in this area of revenue growth, revenue acceleration, revenue attainment. We want to talk about how do you make it predictable. All of us want predictable revenue growth, whether that's growing at 30% a year, 50% a year, 100% a year. You want to make sure it's predictable. Secondly, you want it to be intentional. Intentional means that you are going to focus in on finding the right buyers, the right customers, the right markets, the right organizations that are going to help you with revenue growth and also profitable revenue growth. So we're going to talk about that today. So today we use some big words: transform, revolutionize, evolve or catalyze, and shift. So we've been fortunate over many years to work with hundreds of B2B executives across a variety of different industries. And one of the things that we look at when we get involved with our clients is helping them do a shift, helping to be a catalyst. In fact, we often hear that many times is they were thinking along a certain path. Perhaps they were thinking too small about what was capable of being accomplished. Perhaps they weren't thinking big enough in terms of their goals, their aspirations, and what they wanted to achieve. So helping think about a shift, it's important to do that here as you plan for your success next year. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to cover 6 best practices on this transformational path or journey that you're on today. As with any of our webinars, we encourage your questions. We encourage you to participate in our polls. We love this to be interactive. And as a follow-up to today, after we cover these 6 best practices, we're going to offer a consultative opportunity to sit down with you and talk about applying one of those best practices to your business over the next week or two. So myself or Dale, we're going to follow up with you and see if you'd like to set up time to talk about that, because it's great to have best practices. It's great to have knowledge and wisdom, but it's better to have the application of that knowledge and wisdom into your business so that you can then achieve the net result, which is success. So if we could, let's start off with a poll today, and let's talk a little bit about what's important from your perspective as you come to today's webinar. And let me go ahead and launch this poll. So when you think about best practices from a revenue growth perspective, what do you need today? And you're going to find this is a check all that apply. So are you really looking at creating a predictable revenue growth engine? Is that really important to you as you come to today's webinar? Are you thinking about migrating to more strategic messaging for your audience and the decision makers that you serve today? Are you focusing on creating compelling ROI and business justification for your clients? Are you really looking at one of the things that we'll talk about throughout today's webinar, tying marketing execution to sales outcomes, essentially the cause and effect? Or are you really thinking about better ways to accelerate and close business? Now, I know each of these probably are very important to all of you today. So it's just a question of opting in to decide which of them do you think are most important. So we're going to keep the poll open here, and please go ahead and participate. We really appreciate it. It always provides great value to us. And we'll share the results as we're going through this webinar today. And then after this poll, we're going to jump in and talk about what are the 6 best practices that are transformational. And we're going to talk about specifically what they are, because what we found is there are a lot of things you can do. There are a lot of gambits, a lot of best tips, a lot of interesting programs or campaigns, but there are some things that we find that are just truly transformational in terms of your business model and your success. Okay, so let me go ahead and close this off. And again, this was check all that apply. So let me share the results of the poll today. So 64% of you stated that you'd like to do really is create a predictable revenue growth engine for your company. And that's tied with down below marketing execution tied to sales outcomes. That's always a big question many CEOs, many executives that we work with have. 45% stated that you'd like to have more strategic messaging for your decision makers, your buying audience. Another 45% would like to have a compelling ROI and business justification. And then finally, 55% of you stated you'd like to have better ways to accelerate the close and accelerate the sales cycle. So good. Appreciate your participation in the polls today. And we will have more polls as we go through today's webinar. Okay, so let's jump in. Let me review with you the 6 best practices we're going to cover today. And we're going to talk about examples of how this has been applied. We're also going to talk about how can you apply them today to your business. The first one is implementing your winning strategy. The second is knowing your numbers. The third is knowing your buyer. The fourth is accelerating your sales cycle. The fifth is implementing your scalable growth engine. And the sixth is close with confidence. So these are the 6 we're going to cover today. And by the way, there are many, many more that we could talk about, but suffice to say, this is a great place to start. So let's talk about the first one, probably the one that is most overlooked by most executives that we engage and talk to today. Implement your winning strategy. So most companies have what I call a competing strategy instead of a winning strategy. So the question is, what's the difference between the two? Well, let me give you an example. One of our customers, Mike Prager, CEO at AvidXchange, we were sitting down with him, Craig and I sat down with him and was talking about where he was today and what he wanted to accomplish. And at AvidXchange, before we got involved with them, they'd been a very successful company, growing at the company to $6.5 million of revenue. And then things kind of plateaued. And as we looked at where they were and what they have done, they were really focusing on one market, and they would get, 20, 30, 40 customers every year, new customers every year. And so a nice steady stream of customers that they were winning each and every year. But when you look a little bit further, one of the things that we looked at is, well, how many total companies are there in your market that you could go after in this vertical? And we figured it at about 10,000. And what we started looking at is, did you have an intentional strategy to go win and engage that 10,000 potential buyers in this market? And the answer was no. They just hadn't thought about it from that perspective. So it really starts, when you think about a winning strategy, it starts with taking the right steps. So the first is just to have a goal. Your goal is to win that market. Let's say your market is healthcare or nonprofits, or it's the SMB, or it is North America of certain type of companies, or it's certain accounts that you look at, certain account combinations. But it comes down to defining your market. So you really have to map out what are the markets you're going after, what's the prioritization of those markets, and then who are the decision makers, the buyers in those markets that you want to reach. So this is the first step when you start thinking about your winning strategy. The second one is segmenting and prioritizing. I've always loved Jeffrey Moore's adoption curve, where he talks about innovators on one end and laggards on the other end. And it's true of your markets today too. So when you think about your service or solution, you're going to find some are early adopters, some are the early and late majority, and some are laggards. Each of them truly have different needs, different expectations in terms of how you're going to deliver that service or solution to them. And it's important to have a segmented strategy to engage each and every one to win that market. The third area, as far as the winning strategy, is messaging and positioning as the leader. It's interesting, a number of years ago, I was in Chicago on a business trip, and I was watching television. And at that time, I was chief revenue officer at a CRM company. And I remember turning on the TV in the evening and seeing a commercial by Siebel Systems. At that time, Tom Siebel was the CEO at Siebel Systems. And the commercial was about how they were dominating CRM as a category as a global leader. And it was interesting because when I was there, I knew a lot about Siebel Systems, and I know that they only had about 30 to 40 customers to date, the large customers that they had typically closed with Accenture. Yet they were messaging as the leader. They were acting as the leader. So if you want to win a market, one of the key things you want to do is make sure that you're acting, messaging, and positioning as the leader. The next part of winning strategy is implementing your reach. Buyers can't buy from you if they don't engage with you. And so one of the things I really find interesting when you think about a market, let's say it's healthcare, you may say that there's 50,000 companies in the healthcare market that you want to reach. You've got to have those contacts in your database. You've got to know who they are. You've got to figure out what's important to them, and you've got to engage them in the ways that they need. They are looking for help, looking for guidance, looking for expertise, looking for benefit. If you don't do that, then you're going to miss out on an opportunity to engage 100% of your market. The next one is maximizing wallet share. So when you think about wallet share, each of you have a certain expectation of what you can sell to somebody today. It could be a very specific solution or service, but I'll bet you if we got creative, you would have more than you think. You might have partner solutions that you're going to bolt in with yours. You may have additional services like premium services that you can offer. There are many things that you can do to expand your wallet share that you have with your customers and with your buyer. And so one of the things that we love to do is to look at doing that. One of the customers that we worked with is a company called Dude, where they had one solution for schools, universities, community colleges, and so forth. And over time, they had 15. Their challenge was wallet share because their typical customer only had several of those 15 solutions. So our challenge there was very different. When you have 6,000 universities and colleges as customers, the question is wallet share. And so the job there was to expand wallet share. And then finally, in terms of a winning strategy, one of the most important things you could do is have a coverage strategy. One of the things that when I was the CEO at Intact and Craig was the CMO, one of the things that we realized is that we couldn't reach all of our potential buyers through a direct sales organization. So we actually engaged and built a partner model where we had 300 different partners that were taking our solutions to market. Most of those partners were sell-through partners, reaching different verticals, different geographies, or different markets where we just didn't have a presence. And it was incredibly successful in terms of how we did that. So when we think about implementing the winning strategy, these are key points that we would talk about. And if you'd like to sit down and talk about how do you apply this to your business, we'd love to do that too, because this is key to having the right strategy. Now we'll just talk about one of our customers, AvidXchange. And again, we engaged with them initially, and then 4 years later, we looked at what were we able to work with them to accomplish. The key here is Mike Prager, that I mentioned earlier, wanted to double revenue every year going forward. So from the first year at $6.5 million in annual revenue, we were able to collaborate with him and get the company to $65 million in annual revenue. A lot of things had to work to make that happen. But the key was putting in the operating model that we helped Mike and his team put in, that we help every company put in terms of revenue acceleration and revenue growth. So the key is really being that catalyst to actually help them with that DNA. Okay, so that's the first example. The second best practice we'd like to share with you is knowing your numbers. I've always loved the show, watching Marcus when he comes into a company to see how he's going to work with the business owners to turn things around and make the company successful, more profitable, and grow revenue. And you always hear this saying, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business, which is very true. So one of the things that we would offer up to you is something we call revenue engineering. And for those of you that have attended these webinars, you may have seen this before, where we talk about 3 funnels. The first funnel is the marketing funnel. That's lead generation. That is engaging your audience with the right offers, the right webinars, the right whatever that need to be created for them, and getting them engaged with you. The second funnel is lead development. How do you take somebody that's a market qualified lead and turn them into a sales qualified lead? And that's typically 10% for most B2B companies. And then the final funnel is the sales funnel. How do you take those 160 sales qualified leads and turn them into 40 transactions at $100,000 each? If you can do that, then you know your numbers. And more importantly, what we do when we engage with companies is we break that down on a monthly basis. So you know every month, month in and month out, how you're making progress towards your goal. Now, this is one example of a revenue vector, which is new customer acquisition. If we apply the numbers to current customers, you may have 1,000 customers today that you have out there. But what we're looking for is, how do you look at the expansion into that customer base that you have today? Again, 3 funnels: marketing, lead development, and sales. And being able to really look at having the right campaigns, the right opportunities to do that. One of the customers that we worked with is a company called ICUC, just focusing on services. That's all they did. Was they had not created any proprietary solutions, but they provided tremendous success in terms of helping companies work with them to provide social media management services. Companies like Starbucks, like Google, Novartis, and so forth. And we helped them penetrate 12 different markets, 12 different industries, but we also helped them really look at their strategy that they had for expanding the services they had. We would help them launch typically 1 to 2 new social media management services every year. And by doing so, it means we were expanding the pie with them. The third revenue growth vector is channel partners. And this specifically is not sell with partners, but sell through partners, which I think is just fantastic when you think about mapping your ecosystem and getting into the market with partners. So when you have that ecosystem, you've figured out which partners are the ones you want to work with. You've selected the partners. You've got a partner scorecard. It gives you just a great opportunity to focus in on the right channel partners that are going to help you build out your map to your buyer, wherever that buyer may be in the world. And so knowing your numbers is really kind of mapping that out and saying, okay, if 2024, the objective is to get $8 million of net new growth in terms of revenue, how do you get from here to there? And so this is another area we can help sit down with you and go through some numbers, do some revenue engineering. We do this with every one of our clients today anyway, and we really like to have a pulse on the business. You'll notice the last set down below is new markets, new services, new solutions. So one of the things that we realized is that on the revenue growth vector side, you want to launch new services, new solutions in 2024. But you just don't want to bring them to market. you actually want to have a launch, you want to have a run up to the launch, you want to have sales follow up after launch, you want to have a consistent drumbeat in terms of getting new customers to adopt and use your solutions. So that new service is something that you want to make sure that you've invested in, but you also want to make sure that you reap the reward of revenue growth as a result of that. So the second area, best practice that we talk about, is knowing your numbers. Let's talk about the third one. The third one is knowing your buyers. Now, most of us think that we know our buyer, and we do that because we've had a lot of interactions with different clients, different companies, different stakeholders, and so forth. And many companies extrapolate what they know from their buyer based upon their sales organization that they have today. So that provides a data point. You may even have focus groups. You may have user conferences. All these provide opportunities for you to know your buyer. But one of the keys we find is eliminating the guesswork. There's a lot of guesswork that people have in terms of how to engage the buyer, what to offer to the buyer, and what messaging they should prioritize. So we want to talk about what can you do about that today. One of the first things that we look at doing, and we do this with many of our clients through what we call a strategic messaging workshop, which is, why don't we figure out, let's get down all the information about your messaging and positioning today. And so if you look at, there's 4 levels here. Many companies are focusing on level 1, which is, let's focus on whether it's a service or a solution. What are the features, functions, advantages, benefits that can be offered with your service today? And that's good. And that's what we call level 1. Level 2 is saying, what are the business challenges, pains that you address, and what's the value that you deliver, the solutions that you deliver to those pains? That is even more powerful because now you're bringing the two together. Now you're really talking about resolving some of the latent or long-term pains that your buyer may have today. Level 3, the next level, is how do you optimize the business process? So for instance, you may provide a payment solution today. So there's a payment process that you're going to go in and help somebody figure out how to optimize and deliver value through that entire process. That appeals to executives, because when you're starting to talk to executives about their end-to-end process, and every company out there can be decomposed into process, people, and technology, you're going to find you're going to help them do that, whether that's on the supply chain side, whether that's on the patient care side, whether that is on the financial side, whether that is on the human resource side. There are a multitude of things that you can do to help optimize a process. And then the fourth one, it's the top level, level 4, is outcomes. Helping your buyer achieve specific outcomes, helping them identify and realize the value, the ROI that you're delivering. That is incredible when you can do that. Now, the reason why a lot of times we look at these 4 levels is because many times people are not at the 4th level in terms of their thinking, messaging, or positioning. So one of the things that we look at doing is, how do you move up that value curve as you're looking at messaging and doing that information? Now, once you have that strategic, we'll call it strategic messaging document that looks at the value, the pains, and the value that you deliver, the next question is, gee, this is a lot of information. How do we prioritize this? How do we validate that? Now, we talked earlier about validation with your buyer. One of the things that we found through our business practice is the best way to do that from a statistical perspective is to conduct a survey with your target audience. And we've had the pleasure of doing this with hundreds of companies. What we found is that the truth lies not in our boardroom, the truth lies with the buyer. if we can get enough of the buyers, your buyers, decision makers, to look at taking a survey with us and figure out what's important to them, we can then achieve the type of knowledge to prioritize our messaging, prioritize what we do, prioritize what we offer. So the buyer survey will give you the opportunity to understand your audience from a demographic, process, pain, value, and marketing perspective. Once you do that, you can create messages that really can be prioritized and tied in with your buyer. And that could be at a horizontal level and maybe at a vertical level. But definitely what you're going to be able to do is prioritize the top value propositions and the top business challenges that are important to your target audience. And then finally, you've got to convert that wisdom, that knowledge, into something that people can consume, whether those be videos, like explainer videos, or explainer demonstrations, whether that be a buyer's guide or success story, whether it be a process infographic that shows how you're going to help them optimize the processes that they have today, whether that be through webinars like thought leadership or customer focused webinars. You want the ability to translate that forward with your buyer. So talking through this best practice of knowing your buyer, it starts, at least from our perspective, with the strategic messaging workshop to distill all of the information that you want to look at, the pains that you solve today and the solutions that you provide. Validate that information with your buyers through a buyer intelligence survey. Couple that with industry trends and challenges where you understand your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then deliver that into a core messaging document. Now, the core messaging document that we typically work with our clients to create is then used in a number of different ways. Number one, it becomes an integral part of the sales playbook. So when your people are having sales conversations, you want them to be talking to your prospects and your buyers based upon what's important to them. Now you've got a messaging Bible that you can use to do that. Now they've got the right prioritization that has been statistically refined and validated with your audience. You also want to use that messaging and apply that on your website. And then finally, all of the demand generation, the value creation programs that you have, you want to be able to leverage that messaging. So this becomes very important. When you know your buyer, it just eliminates a lot of the guesswork. So just to refresh here, these are the steps that we talk about, is things that you can do today. Map the strategic and tactical pains, map that together with your solutions, determine what education offers or engagement offers you like to test, validate that through a buyer intelligence survey with your target audience, and then convert that wisdom, that prioritization into the buyer's journey and enabling the buyer's journey and delivering the offers that your buyer is looking for. Okay, so that's the third one. The fourth one is acceleration. Accelerating your sales cycle is just tremendously important today. And when you think about that, it's about sales velocity. So you often hear somebody say, our sales state that your sales cycles are too long. And that's a common complaint that you hear over and over again. We think that most companies need to undergo a digital transformation, and that starts with their website. And so what we look at is the number one place that people go when they hear about you is your website. So if I hear about Digitalis as a solution provider with Planetarium Solutions, or Avid Exchange in terms of accounts payable and invoice management systems, or ICUC in terms of social media management services, chances are I'm going to go to the website first. And when you do that, you have that opportunity to engage your buyer and take them through this journey. So all of your upfront preference setting, education, and knowledge sharing can be done on your digital website. A lot of websites offer good information. They just don't progress the sales cycle for the company. One of our customers that we talk about is Technical Toolboxes. And you can see as we move forward with helping them reshape their WordPress website, we created a sales-driven website for them. Now, Technical Toolboxes provides engineering performance management solutions in the oil and gas space. And so what we realized is that we needed to make sure that we could talk to the specific functions within every company, every oil and gas company in the engineering space. So this one is for integrity and risk management engineers. When they come to the website, we want to basically talk with them. We want to engage them. We want to talk about the challenges that are important to them. We want to talk about the solutions that Technical Toolboxes offers that are important in terms of this integrity and risk management area. We want to answer questions that they would typically have when they are engaged with this audience. We want to undergo and review clients that are using Technical Toolbox solutions to address these areas and receive these benefits. And we want to offer them next steps. So next steps could be a buyer's guide. It could be a recorded demonstration, a recorded video. It could be a customer success story. All these things are attached to this journey. Now, why is this important? It's because today you want to accelerate your sales cycle. Imagine going to a website like this and be able to do this, take you through the buyer's journey. And boy, would you understand the solution? Would you understand what the company does? Would you be a great fit if you went through this journey with what they're looking for? Yes, you would. Think about this. Take your best salesperson, put them into the website, and engage with your buyer. Now, many of you today are engaging with not just one person when you sell to them, but a whole committee of people. It may be different functions. It may be the accounting and finance group, but then that involves legal. It involves procurement. It involves other influential groups. All of them need to have that same journey available to them so that they can get educated and get up to speed. Now, as you can tell, we were enabling this journey based upon the persona or the title of the person or the function. Another way to engage, and this is the way it's easily switched, is to engage by the solutions. So when you have a number of solutions, you want a buyer's journey for each solution. And so what we find most common when we're helping companies transform their current website into a sales-driven website, it's important to think about your audience and how they self-identify. And I won't get into this in detail, but the sales-driven website offers many benefits. Some people want to complete the sale on the website. Some people want to have their salespeople engage at the proper stage of the buying process with the target audience. Let's talk about best practice number 5, that is truly transformational. This is what we talk about, implementing your scalable growth engine. Now, most of you are always in search, as many people are, of the Holy Grail, which is the Holy Grail for demand creation, the Holy Grail to get your audience engaged. Now, what we think is it's actually not a Holy Grail. It's not a silver bullet. It's an engine. So when you put the engine in place, the engine scales. When you press on the accelerator, you go faster. And if it's really highly tuned, you're going to go to great distances with your engine. So one of the things to think about is implementing your engine for every market or for any channel. And there are 9 different areas we talk about. One we talked about earlier, which is this intentional revenue acceleration model that we help organizations put together through revenue engineering. The second one we talked about is the outcome-focused messaging and really having a handle on that. The third one was buyer intelligence. The fourth was reaching 100% of the target audience and so forth. But as you put in the components in the engine, it gives you the ability to go scale and go win a market. Just like with Avid Exchange, we helped them win the commercial property management market. The first thing that we did, then we helped them put that same engine in place in 6 other markets and help them scale and win those markets. So it's just highly important to do that. Now, Jeff Grill is the CEO at a company called Junction Solutions. And I remember one of our first conversations we had with Jeff when we engaged with him. He said, Bob, we spent a lot of money on marketing, but perhaps you guys, you and Craig and the team could actually help us figure out how that marketing spend translates into sales outcomes. So we're very outcome focused. When you think about spending money, you don't want to, you will spend $1 to get $10. You spend $1 to get $20 and so forth. So you want to figure out from a programmatic perspective, from a marketing perspective, where's the ROI? That's transformative because it helps you invest and divest as you move forward. Now let's talk about best practice number 6, close with confidence. If you're like many companies, your major competitor in many sales cycles today is to do nothing. You may go through the entire sales process with a prospect, with a buyer, with an organization, and find out they're just not moving forward with you. So one of the best things you can do is to figure out how you're going to win against the do nothing. And often, I think what's missing is this compelling ROI or business case. So one of the things that we do when we think about this next step is what steps can you do today? And one of our customers, just use another customer example for today, is a company called ProdStream. They provide cost estimating and project management solutions to government contractors. And so they're very good at what they do. One of the things, though, that we worked together with them on is to identify all of the business pains and business challenges that their buyer has today, and to actually execute what we call an ROI workshop, where you actually sit down with your buyer and you walk through the 10 major challenges that they have. And you look at facilitating a discussion about if you put in their solution, what are you able to do in terms of process improvement, in terms of redeploying people, in terms of cost savings, in terms of acceleration, in terms of projects, in terms of accuracy, in terms of the project wins, in terms of better job, in terms of cost estimating. We helped figure all that out. And then what Tom does, Tom's the CEO of the company, he facilitates the discussion with the client to figure out how to quantify that. So that workshop now becomes a quantification. So if they work with a large company and the company says, yes, we can save $1.4 million of savings each year if we use ProdStream, that becomes compelling. I think a lot of times companies don't do that. Companies don't go to that level of building the business case. Either they expect the sponsor to build the business case on their own, or they expect to give that person an ROI calculator or something of the like and hope that magic falls out of the bottom. We just think that this method of facilitating an ROI workshop is much better in terms of making sure that you've got a total monetization on the pain and the reward. The other thing in terms of closing with confidence is providing like customer references, testimonials, success stories, and we'll talk about this last one, a quick start program. So if you think about eliminating risk, the challenge when you're trying to close with confidence is you've got to make sure that there is a compelling business case. The second thing is you've got to eliminate risk. And so by eliminating risk, what that really means is offering up like customers who have achieved outstanding benefits from your services or solutions. It means offering testimonials so that people can actually provide testimonials for what was accomplished through your efforts to accomplish, and success stories. With one of our clients, we recently helped them put together a webinar with one of their key clients, a company called Neighborly. Now, Neighborly is a giant in the franchise industry with over 5,000 franchise locations and 29, 30 different brands that they have. And it was interesting how that executive talked about how Kavinci worked together with them to provide the platform of intelligence so that all of their franchisees could truly understand their business, understand their numbers, have transparency, and really be able to coach up for performance. That was incredibly compelling and persuasive. Now, the last one on here that I added is just the Quick Start program. What we find in many cases is that companies always swing for a home run or for the fence, as we say in baseball, but they don't offer that first step. Sometimes you have to offer a quick start program to show how your solution or service is going to work in their environment in 60 days. How you're going to deliver the benefits, eliminate risk, integrate with existing solutions. And so one of the things that we often do is to create that quick start program and then have this rolled out to full deployment across the company. That is really a very compelling way to actually get your foot in the door and move forward. So let's talk a little bit about the 6 best practices we just covered today that really can be transformational for you today as you think about your path going forward in 2024. The first is implementing your winning strategy. The second is knowing your numbers, and knowing your buyer is third, followed by accelerating your sales cycle. And by the way, there are many things that you can do to accelerate your sales cycle. The fifth is implementing your scalable revenue growth engine by each market. And the sixth is closing with confidence. Just think about 2024 and applying all these 6 best practices to your business today. And by the way, again, I'm going to offer up for all of you today that are attending today's webinar, if you want to sit down and talk about any one of these or a combination of them and how it potentially could apply to your business, we're happy to do that. There's no charge for this. We want you to be successful as you're thinking about next year. To that end, let's get your feedback if we could. If you would be kind enough to participate in another poll. When we do these webinars, we love to hear from you, and this is like one of these 5. What most resonates with you in terms of your takeaway from today's webinar? Is it applying a winning strategy instead of a competing strategy for your business? Is it eliminating experimentation that you have today with your messaging and your offers? Is it that you're looking for compelling ROI and business justification that seals the deal, if you will, for your target audience? Or is it that you'd like to determine how to accelerate your sales cycle? Of course, if you're like me, you'd probably like to check off all these, but we asked this time to check off one because it's about which one resonates with you most. And then lastly, is it applying these best practices to your business model? So again, thank you very much for participating in the poll here. This is great. And then the next area that we're going to move on to is Q&A. So please have your questions ready. Please post your questions. And we'd love to get to as many as we can for today's webinar. So thank you for participating. Let me go ahead and close the poll and show the results. I'll keep it going here for a couple more seconds. Okay, so here's the results. So 25% of you stated that your number one area for takeaway is apply a winning instead of a competing strategy, which is great. It does start with strategy, doesn't it? Another 8% stated it's eliminating experimentation with your messaging, offers, and your positioning. 25% stated that you'd like to create more compelling ROI business justification. 17% stated you'd like to determine how to accelerate your sales cycles. And then finally, 25% applying these best practices across your company. That's fantastic. So thank you for sharing those. Okay, let's go ahead then, if we could, and move on and address questions that you may have as far as Q&A. So let's open up the floor. Please go ahead and post your questions that you have for today's session, and let's make sure that we can address them. We always love this opportunity for us to address questions that you may have. So one of the questions that's popped up here is, this question is how many people do you generally survey? And this would be in regard to the buyer intelligence survey. It's interesting because traditionally we look at somewhere between 30 to 50 people, decision makers, that we want to survey to get a view of the audience. Some cases, though, we keep the survey on, like with AdExchange, with their survey for the first one that we did for them for their current market. We kept it on for 150. With a company called DaVinci, we kept it on for over 200. And the reason for keeping it on wasn't because we needed more statistical analysis. The reason for keeping it on is because many of those taking the survey were looking for follow-up from the company. So anyway, this is really good. So here's a question that came from our audience. I'm in real estate, so I'd like to know how many companies you work with in the real estate. Well, it's interesting. We've worked with a lot of companies, both in terms of really serving the real estate market. So I'm not sure in what context we're talking about, but I will try to take that offline. And we've got a lot of experience working in the real estate market, both companies that are focusing on the commercial real estate, residential, and a combination. So happy to talk to you about that further and talk about some of the examples like I did today on our webinar. So this is really good. Here's another question. And again, thanks for the questions. Keep them coming. What's the best way to show ROI to a prospective client? Savings in dollars, or show them how they will streamline their process and procedures? That's a great question. I think it's both. I think a lot of times where you start is talking about how you're going to actually streamline their existing process, eliminate redundant steps, accelerate results for them. But what we find interesting is that a lot of companies aren't very good at translating that value into money. And so one of the things that we did, we talked about that earlier example, working with Tom in ProdStream as he worked with one of his clients to come up with $1.4 million in savings, is we had applied some FTE numbers, fully loaded numbers for some of the FTEs involved in the process, so we can extrapolate what the cost savings could be. So the real answer is to come up with numbers, because eventually, if somebody's going to be buying your solution, buying your service, chances are they're going to be taking that proposal to their CFO. And if you take it to the CFO is typically, he or she is typically a numbers-oriented person. So most big companies really do have a gatekeeper in terms of what's the threshold that you need to get over. Here's another question. Are these webinars you have throughout the year available to be watched again and later? Yes, they are. And so every one of these webinars we actually record. For those of you who attended today's webinar, we're going to send you a link to the recorded webinar. If you want to revisit it later, share it with other team members that you have in your organization. But we do keep all that available for you. So we have that available. Many of these webinars are actually even on our website. So, but if there's any specific one that you have, please let us know. Great question. We have time perhaps for one or two more questions. Let's see. This question is, building this out from scratch, is this a linear, detailed, or a high-speed, iterative, agile process? It's interesting asking that question. There's typically a sequence of things that should happen so that you don't have to do them over and over again. One of the things that we do show with you, and I'll just bring this up as we're talking, is this map here that we're going to share with you. This is what we call the revenue acceleration system. And if you think about this, everything on this map is something really important that your company should be looking at implementing. The purple is strategic, um, the red is marketing, the yellow is sales, and the green is partners or your ecosystem. So these are things that we refined over many, many customers. We did this first as operating customers, operating companies. So when I was CEO, building private and public companies, we wanted to have a system or an operating model that would allow us to scale revenue. But we also wanted to make sure that we could do that, put it in and optimize it. To your second point, as we do this in a high-speed process, it is agile because we're always going to be improving. Remember one of the things we talked about as far as marketing ROI? Well, marketing ROI, for instance, is about being agile. Some things are going to offer a better return on your investment than others. And so the one thing you want to do is always use this as a model or a platform for learning. But great question. Let's see if we have time for perhaps one or two more questions here. And by the way, if I wasn't able to get to any of your questions today, because we've been fortunate to have many questions from the audience, I'll make sure I follow up with you one-on-one afterwards. Here's a question. Do we have to redo the entire website if we go to a sales-driven website? The answer is no, you don't. So if you think about this, when you move from a website that you have today, let's say it's an informational website, you probably have a lot of good information, but it's probably not organized along a buyer's journey. So one of the things that we try to do when we evolve a company's website is look at mapping out the buyer's journey and then looking at what's available today that we can actually help in terms of knowledge, offers, historical information, webinars, all these great things that we can actually position along the buyer's journey. So many of those things can be reused. So great questions. Appreciate the questions on that. Let's go back to our presentation and a couple of last thoughts here as we're wrapping up today's session. The things that we're talking about today are, we've leveraged this over many, many different B2B companies. And so what we're bringing to you today is serial knowledge, serial wisdom, best practices. Now, as you're looking forward to 2024, some of the next steps that you can take from today's webinar is to discuss how to implement one of these best practices next year. So we'd love to sit down with you, follow up with you. When we follow up with you as far as appointment setting or follow up with you as far as email, we're going to offer the opportunity to set up a consultative session and talk about how one of these best practices could be applied to your business. For many of our clients today, we're actually helping them create their revenue acceleration playbook for next year. It's a comprehensive blueprint, roadmap, if you will, in terms of how to achieve your revenue growth goals for next year and to really map it out, to have a step-by-step process on how to do it. And then another thing that you can do is register for next month's webinar. And next month on January 26th, we're going to talk about how do you actually engineer revenue growth for 2024. So some great next steps that you can take. Here's our contact information for Craig and myself. We're the managing partners and principals for On-Demand Advisors. Dale McConnell, who's a partner at our firm, may be following up with you. But we've got great teams at On-Demand Advisors broken into 4 different areas: strategy, marketing, sales enablement, and partner and ecosystems. And when we work with our clients, we often don't know where they're going to need help, but we do know that they're looking for best practices, solutions, and most importantly, looking out for outcomes and success as you're planning for the next year. So on behalf of myself, Craig, and the entire On-Demand Advisors, I'd like to wish all of you a very happy holiday and a blessed holiday season with your families. I'd also like to encourage you to engage us on a next step as we look at planning for success for 2024. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.